Hey y'all, so today I have the privilege of being able to speak on a panel with other black queens in mental health for an event that this friend of a friend invited me to be a part of. Her name is Raven, and she is also fairly, present in the field and trying to use her skills and her knowledge to further help spread mental health awareness. So that's what today's event is all about. I'll be doing a small spiel on trauma and PTSD and how that manifests and how it can come out in other disorders, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm excited to show you guys a part of what I'll be, speaking about today. So hope you guys enjoy, you learn something, and shout out to Raven for inviting me and having me here.
All right, I want to thank you guys for taking the time out your busy day for coming to my first mental health event. Yes, I'm like super duper duper nervous right now, but it'll be totally fine. So pretty much is what I'm going to talk about. What is mental health, the stigma in the African American community, PTSD, depression, suicide. I'm going to talk about why I chose this career and pretty much talk about my experience. Brittany, who's also one of my guest speakers, she also has a career in mental health, and she is going to talk first, and then we're going to do food and snacks. So thank you guys for coming. So we appreciate it.
Okay.
Hey everybody, how you all doing? Good. So my name is Brittany. I have a master's in counseling psychology. I'm currently working as a therapist as well as being a certified alcohol and drug counselor, and I am also a life coach. So I met Raven through a mutual friend, and me and him had done a video on PTSD for my YouTube channel, where I talk about pretty much all things that affect millennials, mental health, life problems, family, love, relationships, all that good stuff. And he told me Raven was having this event. He was like, I really think that it'd be something really nice for you to be a part of, for you to kind of help out with if you can. So she reached out to me and asked if I would come in and speak a little bit to you guys about trauma, PTSD, and kind of what that looks like. So at one point or another, like, we all kind of go through things in life, like things that we either feel like changed us, they shaped us, they kind of made us who we are, and sometimes we don't have the best memories of whatever that experience was. So when people usually hear trauma or PTSD, the reason why it became so popular is because it was mainly associated when they started doing more research and more work with military personnel who was coming back. That was the first correlation that everybody first really heard this term, and they were like, oh, what is this? Our soldiers, they are coming back with all of these symptoms and these effects, and what's going on and how can we fix that? But what we've come to learn over the last few years is that essentially trauma is associated in anything that you experience to be damaging to you. And sometimes what's traumatic for one person isn't going to necessarily be traumatic for another person. So if you grow up in an environment where it's crime, it's violence, things like that, you grow up thinking that that's normal until you go somewhere else and you see that it's not. So you don't know that your experience is traumatic because we've normalized it. We've become oh, it's normal for me to get up and see somebody in a fight outside. It's normal for me to get up and hear people arguing. It's normal for me to get up and see people fighting each other or people getting shot. That is a lot of why I feel like our younger generation in Chicago is so desensitized to what they're doing and the actions and the hurt that it's causing other people, because this has become their new normal. They don't know what it's like to come from a loving family. They don't know what it's like to have people believe in them, for people to speak life into them. So they just know they go with what they see, with what they've learned. And so in those areas and those socioeconomic statuses, that becomes the foundation, and they don't know anything else. So what we want to understand is what affects one person and what's traumatic for one person isn't going to necessarily be traumatic for another person. But a lot of our common causes of trauma tend to be physical abuse, sexual abuse, car accidents, earthquakes, tsunamis, medical procedures even, abandonment, incarceration, neglect, emotional abuse, we already said rape, sexual assault, even immigration, grief, loss of a loved one, and that can even be a pet, as well as migration, forced migration. So being that the majority of people here are black, a lot of what we experience is epigenetics, which is pretty much like these terrible things happen to our ancestors, and that stuff has been passed down, and it becomes generational trauma. Like a lot of black people are affected by generational trauma, just because we've been in a system in which we are oppressed, in which we've been held back, we haven't been afforded the same opportunities as other communities. So our children, our great-grandchildren, all of that trickles down. If you went through something and you didn't heal from it, it affects your being. It affects how you work with other people, how you connect with other people. It causes interpersonal relationships. And then, however you decide to cope with that traumatic experience, that gets passed down and pushed off and projected onto the people around you. So if you go through something traumatic, and like for black people, and Raven will probably touch on this when she talks about depression, is the fact that our symptoms don't look the same as a lot of white people or other communities. Like when we are depressed, when we experience trauma, we become irritable, we become angry, we have outbursts. Like that is what our symptoms typically look like. So I just wanted to make sure that like I really explained the fact that like anybody can really get a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder. And just because you experience trauma doesn't mean you necessarily have PTSD. What makes PTSD an actual diagnosis is the fact that like you have these symptoms that continue to reoccur since the traumatic event. So a lot of times that can just look like disassociation. So a lot of the clients that I work with, they've gone through traumatic events. So sometimes that may look like or feel like being outside of your body. Like moving through life but not necessarily feeling like you're present all the time. Or feeling like, another symptom is like falling into, like a lot of people have flashbacks, where they sit and they kind of relive the whole experience, like, and it's not just mentally, physiologically. So these symptoms that come out of us physically, again, like this tense being, constantly feeling on edge, paranoia, being overwhelmed, having a general sense of distrust. Because most of the time when we experience trauma, some type of boundary has been violated. So one of the things that I feel like is really also important, so like let's talk about symptoms of what trauma and what PTSD looks like. So you may have, like we said, like you may re-experience like these emotional triggers. You go somewhere, you hear a sound, you see something, it brings over like this emotional life where your mind immediately goes back to whatever that event was. So like for people who have grown up in the area with like gunshots, like firecrackers could be a trigger for them just because of like that past experience of hearing that noise and associating that with something very specific. So they may even start to avoid. They don't want to go places, they don't want to be around anybody that reminds them of the traumatic event or whatever took place. So they can be moody. Your moods can shift a lot. You can go from 0 to 100. The person can be really sweet, and then something goes wrong, and then they have an anger outburst. Decreased interest in activities. So again, that's why like a lot of times you'll see PTSD in conjunction with depression, because that's where the lack of motivation, the loss in interest, lack of emotional expression. A lot of people who have trauma or PTSD, they usually describe themselves as feeling numb a lot of the time. Like they don't feel one way or another, or either like they feel nothing or they're extremely emotionally charged, and they're kind of like they have this unbalanced status. And like we said, increased irritability, difficulty concentrating, all of that. So I also want to make sure that we specify like what happens for our children when they are affected by different forms of trauma. How does that impact their development? So a lot of times you may hear like somebody that is unfortunately like in a domestic violence situation, and they have kids that are present. They may try to downplay or minimize the effect that the abuse or the violence is having on that child, but they're not really noticing the fact that children, they pick up on all of that. People don't really give children enough credit for the things that they observe and the things that they begin to internalize. So if a child before the age of 18 experiences like recurring or severe emotional abuse, physical abuse, physical neglect, emotional neglect, the things that kind of help shape us and allow us to form bonds with like our caregivers and things and the people that are really close to us. And that can look like, so being in a household or having a parent that is a drug abuser or an alcohol abuser. You have a family member, a parent, somebody that's close to you that's in prison right now, or you kind of sat with them through that experience. having a family member maybe being a caretaker for somebody that is mentally ill, depressed, or just like they don't have their own mental stuff together. So if a child is like having to step in and become a caretaker for a family member and they witness all of their mental health deteriorating, that can also be traumatic. Again, witnessing the parent being either the abuser or being abused, that's a big one. As well as maybe even not having both of their biological parents present. So there are a lot of different ways in which like this manifests in children, and we want to make sure that we're paying attention to it, that if we even think that our child has gone through something traumatic, that we talk to them about it, that we help them sort out their feelings, because what happens is when we don't heal from these things, then we're just navigating the world not being the best person that we feel that we can really be. We're not allowing ourselves to connect with our emotions because we are so resistant to feeling the things that come up for us due to that traumatic experience. So trauma, in addition to like being a part of PTSD, it also can come out in other personality disorders. So I work with the majority of my clientele, they have what's called borderline personality disorder, which is really interpersonal. It's a personality disorder. So this may look like, and I hate to point out like the bad things, but like being very needy or codependent, like not being able to function in life on their own, taking rejection very harshly, or even something that they perceive as rejection. They just have a hard time getting along with people, and they kind of act in ways that like either get them attention, and usually that comes from the fact that they had some type of traumatic experience in which, like I said, their boundaries were violated, or they grew up not having the right attachment to their caregivers and things like that. So yeah, I think that that's pretty much all I have. If there's anything else, like any other questions that you all have about what trauma looks like, how can we start to heal from trauma? First step is to make sure that we are acknowledging the fact that like these experiences have hurt us. Because we can't change what we won't accept. We can't change what we won't acknowledge. So we need to make sure that you're able to say, yeah, this happened to me. I'm not going to be in denial about it no more. Because the unfortunate thing is when we go through trauma, a lot of times we victim blame. Like, we put it on ourselves. I shouldn't have did that. I shouldn't have been there. I could have done this different. When somebody dies, you know, and it could be completely out of your hands, as I should have been there more. What could I have done more? So we take this stuff on and we internalize it and we make it our baggage instead of thinking about, like, okay, where did my control really lie? What do I actually have a hand in, or what things am I attaching myself to because I'm experiencing some type of guilt behind whatever. And once you acknowledge that, then you can work towards changing it. Then you can say, you know, I don't want the fact that I'm traumatic that I've been through a traumatic experience to make me hypervigilant, which makes me like have an attitude with everybody. I can't trust nobody. I keep everybody at an arm's distance. Like, I want close relationships. So that means I need to work on my trauma and heal from that. So that way I'm not pushing away the people that actually care about me, the people that want to help me.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So if you're working with a younger person, what are some of the things that you might do to help them work through some trauma that they've experienced?
So you want to talk to them about their feelings. One thing is like, kids, they can feel stuff, but they don't always know what to call it, right? They don't always know what to name it. So you want to make sure that like you're using language that they can understand, and you're just asking them like what they're feeling. How did that make you feel to see that? Oh, it made me sad. Do you think about it a lot? You want to inquire about things like that, because if that stays on their mind, and with kids, sometimes if they're not talking about it verbally, it'll come out symptomatically. So they may start having nightmares during, you know, they may have a hard time going to sleep or falling asleep. Their eating patterns may change. Those are the things we kind of look for with children. Now, when you talk about so if you suspect or you're concerned that like, or you notice that a child is behaving differently, so like a child who has unfortunately been like sexually abused. Children who have a history of sexual abuse, they act in ways, or they do things or act out behaviors that are not appropriate for somebody their age, for stuff that they shouldn't know anything about. So that's the first kind of signal, or that's why like play therapy with younger children is really important. If you feel like your child is withholding something, or they don't feel like they really have a safe space to talk, taking them to meet with a therapist who specializes in play therapy, because what that does is they have like toys, or they have them draw, and that's how a child usually expresses when they don't necessarily have the words. So you just want to make sure that you are providing a very safe space for them to do that, for them to know that their feelings are going to be validated, to know that they can feel comfortable sharing any and everything with you, because that's when it starts. And that's unfortunately, I feel like, plagues the black community, is the fact that we have this narrative where a lot of our black children grow up feeling like they can't talk to their parents about certain things because of the reaction that they're going to get in spite of that. Or if I tell you I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling depressed, you're not going to take it seriously. What you got to be depressed about? What you got to be sad about? We got to change that narrative. We got to give our people the space to really be able to say, like, this is weighing on me. And that's what I mean about, like, what's traumatic for somebody may not be traumatic for you. Somebody, they may be going through a transitional change, you know, let's say you just lost a close family member, you're getting ready to start a new job, or you're getting ready to go away to school, whatever. And that can weigh on you and affect, like, how you feel on a day-to-day basis. And if you can't tell, you know, the people closest to you that this is what's burdening you, well, that ain't that serious. We can't brush that off, because then that's what takes away the space that our children feel like they need in order to be very transparent and open and to feel validated by the people that they care about the most. Because usually when something traumatic happens, a lot of times people look to other people to validate their experience, to validate the fact that they should be, you know, hurt and in pain or whatever, because of what took place. But if that happens and you get met with, like, no, it ain't that big of a deal, you're going to not want to talk to anybody, because you're not going to feel like anybody can understand you. So that's the biggest thing, is to really just give our kids, like, the space where they can be honest and open.
How can you show them that you're, like, taking their turns and, you know, what they want to experience, make them understand that? You, in your mind, it's not a big deal, but to them, how do you express that to them?
So you find out, like, what's, like, you want to make sure that you're having a conversation around, like, what's bothering them. Why is it bothering them? You want to be inquisitive when it comes to a child being upset. Like, sometimes you can tell when the reaction isn't warranted by whatever took place. However, you don't want to invalidate and, like, believe that it's not as big of a deal, because in the minds of kids, a lot of stuff is a big deal. Mm-hmm. We don't see it that way because we know how to take a step back. They don't. All they know is their present moment. So you want to just make sure that you're just addressing them in a calm and somewhat, like, just dialogue way, so that way they understand that, like, you know, it's whatever is taking place, like, you're there to listen to them, and then you're also going to, like, reason with them as far as, like, if you feel like the reaction is warranted, and if it's not, like, how do we work on, like, teaching that kid coping skills, because that's one of the main things our children lack, is, like, coping skills. They don't know how to deal when their emotions become dysregulated. They just feel. And so by teaching the child and working with them on, like, okay, when you get upset, like, let's take deep breaths. Mm-hmm. Let's go sit down in your favorite space, or grab your favorite blanket or your favorite toy and just take some deep breaths. And then when you're ready and you calm down, then let's talk about what's going on. And once you kind of provide that environment, then they form a routine. Then they know, okay, I get upset, I go get my toy, I go deep breathe, I relax, and then me and mommy or me and daddy or me and grandma, whoever it is, then, like, we talk about it once I feel like I can really, like, speak without being overwhelmed by emotions.
So you work with adults and children, or just with adults?
Right now, I'm only working with adults. Well, actually, no, I lied. One of my clients that I see in private practice is 10, and one of them is 15. So,
You say you do private practice, so you're an LCC?
yeah, I'm an LPC.
So what advice that you have for adults that's going through traumatic disorder?
Go to therapy. Go to therapy. Like, I know that
our community has been so stigmatized by what, like, going to therapy represents. I promise it don't mean you crazy. I promise that it don't mean that you're going to get a diagnosis or somebody going to put you on some pills. It just means that, like, even if stuff is going good, it could go better. So if you go and you speak with somebody who's giving you the space, because that's one thing, like, our family and friends, we want to utilize them, we want to be there for them, but we cannot always either be the dumping ground or be dumping all our stuff on our family. It's one thing to talk to them and to get advice, but the beauty about therapy is having somebody that is completely removed from the situation. They can hear and understand, like, both sides, and then speak to you about what they feel like is in your best interest, and helping you to come to a nice compromise or a conclusion or a practice or whatever it is you feel like you need in order to go from good to great. So if you've dealt with anything traumatic, that is, like, the first step, because then what you're going to sit down and realize is, like, how is my trauma coming out? What am I doing that I didn't notice that I was doing? Because the therapist is going to know how to get that out of you. They're going to know what questions to ask to see if, like, what you experience, are you just downplaying it, are you suppressing it, or is it actually showing up in your day-to-day life?
Yeah. Okay, you mentioned that the trauma and experiences you have or you grew up with them. How do you address a kid who acts out like what you see, like the parents and stuff, all the negative stuff that they do, she acts out herself, like this is her personality, this is my height, without actually scolding or quote unquote punishing them for acting not themselves.
Yeah. So again, like we kind of talked about, you want to start setting up the space for them to be able to talk about like why their behavior is coming out the way that it is. Because again, like kids, they don't know how to use words. One of the first emotions that we learn is anger. So because we usually see it acted out by people around us, and it just becomes the easy feeling to gravitate towards. When actually we use anger to cover other things. We use it to cover hurt, pain, disappointment, sadness, resentment, like all these other specific things that we feel underneath. But because we don't really know the language or how to differentiate, we just go to anger. So a lot of kids, if they grow up seeing people or like the adults in their life act a certain way, and some of that may be like with anger and then they acting out, then usually it's because, like you already know, this is what they're seeing. However, there's only so much you can do if that environment doesn't change. You can try to intervene, be a positive influence, talk to them about what's going on at home, as well as just kind of having them understand like why the people that they're seeing like are doing these things and why it isn't okay to replicate the behavior. The best thing that you can do for children is to model the behavior that you want them to exhibit. But if you are if they are in a space where like you trying to be the positive influence, but then you got people, that are within the home that are kind of working against that, that just means you need to bring that kid around you. You need to integrate them into more positive experiences to combat, because like when you grow up, we have these things called protective factors and risk factors. Based on like, if I was to assess any person, psychologically, like I'm going to think about like, if they're struggling with something, what put them at risk to struggle with this, what aided in them struggling this, and what's protecting them and what's making them resilient to not act out symptomatically due to whatever it is that they're experiencing. So you want to have a good idea of like, if I integrate, if a kid, this is a perfect example, so if a kid grows up in an inner city, not so good neighborhood, he doesn't see a lot of great things, but then somebody comes in, they're putting him in activities, they're teaching him new stuff, they're putting him around new crowds, they're bringing him to new environments, they're taking him to travel. Those become his protective factors from his environment. So then you have a chance at reforming that child based on the fact that you are providing them with a complete new experience, and you're talking with them about the things that they are seeing when they are not in their vicinity. So that they know, yeah, you're around that, and it's not right. And don't act like that. And that's not how you treat a woman. And that's not what family looks like. So you just want to be able, like, that's the only way that our kids have, like, that grow up that don't have, like, the best opportunities afforded to them, and then they kind of grow into these people that aren't really the most productive members of society, is because nobody is stepping in to kind of create a new environment or a new experience for them.